enamored by the idea of changing my name. And this is something that I've thought about ever since I would say in high school, like late high school, around junior year. I made the decision, when I get to where I want to be, or when I have the capability, I am going to change my name. And I think as a kid, I did process why. I did process like why I wanted to change my name. And I think as a child and somebody whose brain was still developing, I wanted to change my name because I saw it as being tied to, my dad or my father, but also because I saw it as something that wasn't inherently mine. I saw it as almost like a detached version of myself. And I don't know if other people feel like this, but I know I've certainly felt like this, and I've spoken to a lot of others who feel like this. But basically, what I was feeling as a kid is my name never felt like me. Like, you know how when somebody says like, "Oh, you look like I don't know, you look like a Amethyst, or you look like a John, or you look like a whatever your name is." When you say your name and that person says, "Oh, it fits you," you look like that. You kind of embody that. And I think that's what, when people say like you look like a whatever your name is, or like your name fits you, it just means that you embody kind of like the essence of what your name is. And I never felt like I embodied the essence of what my name was, because one, I didn't choose my name. None of us chose our name, unless you actually did choose your name and change it, whether legally through government or just as an alias. But I never felt like my name embodied my essence of who I was. I felt like it embodied, my parents, because that's who gave it to me. Specifically, my dad, I think, gave me that name. So I always wanted to remove myself because, the backstory with my father, I'm not going to get into it, but yeah, I've been a misandrist since a young age and cut that man off years ago. But that's not what this video is about. This is an educational video. But I will say, I always just felt like I never really embodied my name. So like, I always told myself I was going to change my name legally. And once I decided that, I started keeping a notes diary. And my notes diary was just filled with, potential names. Every day I would add to it. So sometimes in the middle of the night at 3 a.m., I might wake up and I might type like a new name that came to me, like what I was feeling like that day, like what I should change my name to. Because I always told myself the reason why I didn't, it's very easy to change your name if you have all your documents together, but I always told myself the reason why I didn't is because I haven't yet found a name that embodied who I was. I felt like who I was constantly changing and constantly shifting and constantly fluid and in flux. And that is true. Who I am is constantly changing and fluid and in flux, and who you are is constantly changing and in flux. And that's why I wanted to make this video, because I think that we need to change the concept of names. I think in Western society, we often approach names as like, your parents gave you this name, so this is who you are for the rest of your life. And if you change your name legally, for some reason, people just, whether you change that through, orientation, like if you're a trans woman or a trans man and you're changing your name to, you're leaving behind your dead name, Western society seems to have such a hard time with processing. Not a hard time. I feel like Western society is so used to limiting people and boxing people into whatever their limiting beliefs are, whatever their stereotypes are, whatever their projections of that person is, that when people dare to change their name, it's seen as this very like, I'm not going to call you that, or, it's seen as this like, it could be seen, if you're not changing it for, gender identity reasons, it's seen as a very vain thing, right? It's seen like only celebrities have the right to change their name, right? Only celebrities have the right to take on a new alias, or who are you? Like you're nobody to change your name. I'm gonna call you your dead name. Like people say that to trans women. Or who are you? I'm gonna call you your original name if it's not, gender identifying based. It's like, you're not a celebrity, you're not an author. Like, who are you to reclaim your name? So that's something I've been thinking about a lot, is the concepts of names and why, as a society, specifically in the West, people don't really take it serious when you try to change your name. And I was also thinking about, as a kid, the concept of why I felt like I had to wait until a moment when I found a name that embodied me to change my name, when I realized I could change my name at any point. I could keep changing my name because I'm constantly evolving as a person and constantly developing and growing, and every day learning something new about myself. So my name is constantly in flux. And that's when I started going down the history of names, and I started researching the history of naming practices in particularly what I found is that indigenous cultures practice the concept of giving yourself a new name, and your name is constantly changing. So in indigenous cultures, you might be born with one name, but by the end of your life, you would have had several names that you give yourself, your community gives yourself, your parents give you, but mainly that you are renaming yourself, or that the community might rename yourself, based on how your personality changes and based on how you develop as a person. And I'm going to get into a specific example about that. I actually did a documentary where I flew to Japan and spoke with one particular indigenous community, the Ainu community, about their naming practices and how it changes as people grow older. So, with that being said, I do just want to, before I get into that example, I do just want to highlight how Western, specifically white Western society, when I say Western, I'm referring to whiteness anyway. I'm not referring to Black American, because honestly, in our community, it is common to change your name. Like, I know all my cousins had changed their name. Like, everybody has their street name that they're known. So firstly, what I learned, and you'll see this when you guys watch the documentary where I traveled to Japan. Again, it is in the YouTube at incendiaryballoons.com. Please go watch it, because this is just like surface level, but the documentary really goes in depth and you hear directly from Ainu people and Ainu women. But a first example of this, of names as living spirits and not just static labels, would be among the Ainu people. So among the Ainu, a name wasn't just a tag that you were born with. It was essentially a spiritual signature that could evolve as whether it be your inner nature, your behavior, or even your, reputation, public reputation within the community changed. So names were essentially seen more as being tied to one's Ramat, and Ramat just means like your soul or your life spirit, rather than just something that your parent gives you. So if your personality shifted, your name would then shift too. So for example, a child given a name that could mean hot-tempered, right? The name could mean like raging waters, or, just some sort of hot temperament at birth, might later, upon showing courage, kindness, or skill, be renamed with a word meaning a strong, gentle river, or it might, that name would eventually change into something that would mean like calm waters. And these later names often came from observable traits or deeds. So whether it be bravery in hunting, healing ability, quick wit, or even a funny incident, right? So changing names wasn't random for Ainu people, and it wasn't really based in more of a spiritual occurrence. It also meant that to keep an old name when you've already changed inside was seen as a false representation of your spirit. So it was a personality-based renaming ritual, essentially. So when someone's personality had clearly developed, often between, I would say, the developmental years of 5 to 9, a renaming ritual took place. Ethnographic notes from early 20th century and Hokkaido fieldwork described it roughly like this. The elder, or the tsuskar, which is essentially a shaman, would observe the child's traits, how they interact with others, their skills, their temperament. Then, secondly, family members would gather and discuss possible new names, often using metaphors. So, for example, bright dawn or gentle snow. These are just examples I'm giving. And the name was then announced during a small home ceremony, sometimes with libations to the house spirit. And, in Ainu language, Kamoi Sep, or house god, was the house spirit. And an offering or some sort of food was given. From that point on, everyone in the village would begin using the new name. So the old name would be dropped, and just completely dropped, because it would be considered taboo to call someone their old name or their dead name. And it would almost be like calling someone by the wrong soul. So if a person's life later took a dramatic turn, for example, they became a renowned hunter or a healer, or even suffered a profound tragedy, another name change would then occur in adulthood. And it would keep going like this. And this was, a realignment of the name with the spirit's current path. Now, what I think would be great is if we did this for ourselves. If we didn't look, we could look to the community to rename us, but also if we just did it ourselves and constantly changed our name based on who we thought we were, and, the things that we've overcome and how that represents us. I think that would be just like an incredible shift in so many ways for American, mental health and different sociological reasons as well. But I don't even want to just say American, but in general, because I don't really think anybody really still practices that consistent name change throughout your life. So yeah, that's just something that's been on my mind, and something that I think you should check out. It's been on my mind ever since I came back from Japan and doing interviews with the Ainu people, which go watch on YouTube, and Incendiary Balloons Media, if you want to see the full documentary and get in more depth. But it's something that's been on my mind, and something that I think could really revolutionize the modern world and help a lot with introspection. Everybody has like their street name that they're known as, or like they're just their name in the neighborhood, or like what their friends and family calls them in Black communities, and also in Latin communities. Like basically any community of color, we rename ourselves, but our names don't constantly change. And that's what I want to point out here. It's like, even though within different communities of color within the states, we do rename ourselves, like we have a new name, it's not constantly changing based on our personality. And that's why I want to get into a really, really unique practice that Indigenous Ainu people practice. And again, if you want to see the full documentary and hear all about, how... Sorry, my mic. Okay. If you want to see the full documentary and hear all about how they changed their name based on, different stages of life, you can go to YouTube and watch it at Incendiary Balloons Media. It's a documentary about Ainu culture. It's actually in the bio on TikTok, and on the YouTube page is a documentary about Ainu way of life. That's AINU, and Incendiary Balloons Media on YouTube, and also on our website, incendiaryballoons.com. But yes, basically what I found with Ainu culture is that your name is constantly in flux and constantly changing at different stages of your life. And I think that we could really benefit from implementing this structure into Western civilization, or just in our everyday lives. Like for me, that's something that I want to do, is to be able to constantly change my name based on my growth and my development, almost like a marker or a milestone of, okay, I've made it this far. I've worked on breaking this cycle or this chain or this habit, and now this is my new name. This is my new self. And I think that will help a lot with like just overall quality of life, because one, like, you don't have to be confined into this box of identity that so many feel confined to under capitalist structures. And two, mental health. Like this would really help mental health in Western society, where it can be more proactive instead of reactive. So proactive, okay, this is my current self, my current name, this is what I want to work on, and this is a marker to see, have I changed this? Has my name stayed the same throughout my whole life, or has it developed? Has it embodied more of who I currently am, and who am I currently? It will basically help with a lot of new, self-reflection and ideas of introspection and self-awareness. You should have self-awareness. People should have self-awareness outside of a naming system, but I think this is a great like barrier or marker, and it just feels like more identity owning and being able to take up space with your identity and have people call you by a name that you feel fits you instead of what's been given to you. So yeah,